So welcome to the next episode of Let's Know Buffalo. Today our guest is Alex from Spooling Up Performance.
What's going on?
How are you, my friend?
Yeah, great, man. Another great day out here.
So you own your own business. It's a sports car performance shop.
Yep.
Why don't you talk a little bit about it and how you got it started?
Yeah, so Spooling Up Performance is a automotive performance and repair shop. Started from back in 2016, 17 time frame. I was still in the service, and I was building a car on my own, and there was really no platform or space online video wise where people were explaining steps that they were doing or issues that they were running into building their own car in that specific platform. And I thought, hey, I got all this information from people I've talked to, like, why don't I put it out there in that space so that people can refer to it or go back to it if they're having the same issues or want to replicate the same thing. So kind of started off as like a YouTube channel. Did that, documented my own stuff, filmed a lot of, race cars at tracks and stuff like that, and kind of got it going, got a little following, getting built.
So were you just doing that out of your personal garage?
Yeah, right out of the garage. I was living in Tennessee at the moment. And yeah, I just come back from Afghanistan, and I was like, I want to channel this, passion I have towards creating, content and kind of documenting my journey so I can go back and watch this stuff too. And at the time my son was real young, so he got a kick out of it, and it was cool to kind of go back and watch those things. And as time evolved and, I exited service and moved back up here, we were continuing to do the same thing, and I ended up getting like a one bay, shop to kind of work on our own stuff and kind of play with our toys and stuff and whatnot. But what ended up happening is, like anything else, is people started asking, oh, hey, could you do this? Yeah, sure, I could probably do that. That's fine. I was find time to do it.
Where it all started just organically, you documenting stuff and putting out the information that you couldn't find.
Right.
That right there is amazing.
Yeah, and honestly, it you don't think about those things in the moment, right? You think about like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. Like someone wants to do this. That's pretty cool that they trust me with that.
Right.
And then it started kind of slowly getting more. So it was just like, the next guy would come, and then a family member would ask, and then it's this, and then I'm like, holy crap, like I can't keep up with this. And I still got to support my family, work my job, and all this other stuff. So, in the midst of it all, I was working, for construction at the time, or highway department at the time. And, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, man, I could really probably turn this into something. So what I did is I kept my full-time job. I hired on a technician to work out of that shop, just, started the LLC, got it really going.
Yep.
Hired someone to work out of there, just handling like the odd jobs that we were getting. And as soon as we launched that, it was like, okay, game on, right? And that's when it was like the floodgates started opening. We started getting, the work coming in, so on and so forth. Then we started running out of room. So that single one bay shop was not sufficient enough, and we didn't have parking. So we found a spot on Transit Road, kind of moved over there in West Seneca to a 2-bay. And, that's when you start going through a lot of your growing pains, right? Is trying to figure out like, what is business and how do I navigate this? It's like it's a hard medium, and especially being the guy that's not there every day, it becomes a struggle. But my philosophy behind this business was slow and methodical. I didn't want to be like an overnight, like blow up shop that, came about. I wanted to go about it in a way of like systematic and what the long game looked like.
But also sometimes you can't control that, right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, the chaos comes to you most.
Well, we were just talking with somebody about how he has a small client base because he's afraid, like, if it doubles, like he's not going to be able to provide that same service. So in your case, like you're saying, the business is flowing in, and it's like, okay, I have to figure out a way to deal with it now. So did your slow, methodical, systematic approach, does the military have anything to do with that?
Yeah. So, I did close to 9 years active duty.
Thank you for your service.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. A lot of that stems from that. And, I truly believe that like people are born leaders. People are born with drive and stuff like that. You can't teach that stuff. you can teach people how to lead people, but the true leadership aspect behind it is not taught, in my opinion. It's just a natural ability, right? So I've always prided myself on that. You know, I led a bunch of people in the Army. I was in, you know, various leadership roles with a lot of people under me. And I translate a lot of what I do today to that. And the way I go about the problems that come up in business, and the stress and the timelines and, you know, pressure and all that stuff, I, you know, attribute to the things I learned there, where you have to be, right? It's when it's life or death,
stakes are
it's different,
way higher,
right? So the problems that grow within business, in my perspective, over the last few years is, you know, you can have two types of problems. You can have problems that are just, you know, this is terrible, everything's going wrong, or everything's going so right that now I have a new set of problems. But those are the type of problems I want to have. You know what I mean? So it's like tackling every day, trying to figure out what we can do to be better than the last day, and leading my team that I have built there to portray themselves and the business the best we can, and also coaching them personally is a huge thing that I don't really see much anymore, right? You just see employees as a number, you know what I mean? But with a small business, like, you have to be well-rounded, you have to have a solid team, morale has to be good. You know, there's a lot of things that go behind it. And I think in order to be successful in that realm, especially in a automotive industry, like, you got to keep those guys motivated, you got to keep them driven, you got to have goals, and, you know, pull them aside, have coaching moments. You know, I'm never a guy that's going to beat anybody down because they did anything wrong or whatever. Like, everybody makes mistakes, everybody's human, and it's how we can move forward and be better. So that's really like how I translate the stuff I've learned in the service to go with that. So
does it help with execution as well from being in the service? Because that's something I feel like I know I struggle with, and I think a lot of business owners do, where, like, I may have a lot of ideas, but prioritizing and executing is a different, like, part of your brain to work. And obviously, I think coming from your background, you have no choice but to execute the mission ahead.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword sometimes, right? So it's like, you can't always just pull the trigger on stuff. You have to, you know, figure it out and have a plan and, you know, kind of stick with it. And that's, I'm sure you guys can relate to that a lot too, is like, you know, some of the business ideas or business plans that you have are, you know, kind of long game, right? It's not an instant thing where it's going to be like, okay, this is going to happen right now. But it's like, okay, hey, this is the vision, and this is direction we're moving towards, and these are the steps we got to take to get to it. It's all the little nuances in between that you have to execute on a day-to-day basis. And it's, you know, I try to teach my guys too, like, you guys have skill sets that I don't, and I have skill sets that you don't. So if we merge all of that, we can come to a decision very, very fast. And in our business, it's a results-driven business, right? People want results. They bring a vehicle to us to either upgrade or fix. They want results, you know, and we're trying to, you know, be at a higher tier than your average repair shop or performance shop. We want, you know, people to know and trust us for the work that we put out. And with those expectations comes a responsibility of being able to act fast and swift, right? So it's like, you come across a problem, there's no time to really dwell. You have to make a decision based on your gut and your experience. So there's never going to be anybody there to tell you what's right or wrong, and you got to take risks. So, you know, if you done all your work and your research on a certain vehicle or a certain situation and it's, you know, not very clear, you got to figure it out. You got to go with the gut feeling. You got to go with what your past experience is and roll with it. And that's basically what we've done until this point. You know, it's do right by everybody else and it'll come back.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, I think one of the big things that we've heard over and over again is like customer service and things like that. Now, you very quickly have grown. You've expanded again.
Yeah. So now
from your 2 bay to now where you are today.
Yep.
On Niagara Street, right?
Yep, down in Niagara on that whole new area.
That's
developed
beautiful.
area. Yeah, I love it. It's sweet. We really capitalized on grabbing that building at the time we did, because everything was kind of already in process, and it just keeps getting better every season.
How stressful was that now, again, with that next level of expansion, right?
Yeah, super stressful, honestly. Like, you know, I've watched, you know, previous episodes that you guys have, and, you know, there was somebody talking about, you know, the stresses of, you know, you got stresses of payroll, you got stresses of overhead, you got this and that. And it's like, you don't know what the market's going to do ever. Right. So you have to level out the risk, you know, factor that goes into everything. And, you know, it was going to be double of everything,
right?
Pretty much. And just going into it. So I had to justify that. I knew we were going to have the work to do it. It's just, you know, long-term sustainability, right? That's what I think about. It's like, okay, we can do this right now, but how long can we do it?
Right.
So, you know, I jumped and we got into it, and, you know, there's hiccups along the way of everything that you change, right? Even with an employee change, you have a hiccup, right?
Yeah.
There's always learning, and, you know.
And just when you think you've got everything figured out,
something else goes.
It's a lease.
Yeah.
It's a regulations change. It's an employee leaving. It's, you know.
Yeah. It's a whirlwind, right? And you got all different types of personalities. And I think that's where, like, my past comes into play, is like, I've dealt with every kind of person there is, you know, from soldiers that I've had from all different parts of the country, different backgrounds, different upbringing, stuff like that. Like, I've dealt with almost every kind of person that you can think of, and then factor in the overseas portion. It's like, you know, there's really not a situation that I don't think I'm, like, not mentally prepared for. Right. I mean, every situation is different, but at the same time, it's like, okay, like, I know that if I stay calm, cool, and collective, that everybody else will feel the same way. And that's how you lead by example.
Well, and I think that owning a business, right, like in any of my businesses, it's just tackling the problem at hand and making the best decision based off of your knowledge and your experiences, right? And that is going to separate a good business owner from a bad business owner, or a good real estate agent from a bad real estate agent, a good investor, right? Like,
yeah.
And I oftentimes get young investors that are questioning me after we've broken down all the numbers. They want to buy a property, a duplex or a commercial building, whatever that is. And I said, at the end of the day, we've broken down the numbers. There's the facts.
Right.
Now it's on you to determine how you go about that, whether you buy it and renovate it and what renovations you do to it. And then it's going to be determined how much money you make off of that, whether you're a good investor or a bad investor. I can't do that part for you, right? And some of those decisions, that's where...
Yeah, it's like the old saying, like, you can lead a horse to water, you can't force it to drink, right? It's like, I can show you everything that you need to do to be 100%. Successful, but, you know, you need to act on it as well.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, I think that goes with a lot of things in life too. I think, like, it's just cool to watch people in general. You know, I'm never going to be the person that downplays another business. I'm never going to be the person that, you know, lets my team downplay another business. That's, you know, huge. Even if we, you know, we've had, you know, as there's all those sayings, like, as you rise, you know, the people that are against you are going to rise to, like, try to take you down. Right. So we've had our fair share of, like, you know, other businesses and people and past employees and stuff come try to, you know, ruffle feathers or whatever. But, you know, I always tell my guys, you know, water our own grass, right?
That was a huge part of my employees and something that I constantly push. Do not get caught talking shit about another business.
Exactly.
I do not want to hear it. I do not want it coming back to me. If a customer comes in and they want to say their complaint, their 2 cents, fine. But keep your trap shut. Like, it's just not a good look. Buffalo is way too small of a town. Everybody talks. It's just not something that I want to be known for.
Exactly. It's just, and you never know, like, what falls on whose ears, right? Anybody that's in earshot can hear anything you're saying. And that's, you know, that's one of our biggest philosophies inside our shop too, is like, no matter what the noise is around us, we gotta, we can listen to it whenever, but tone it out, stay focused on us, water our own grass, and we're gonna stay on our path, strive towards our goals, and keep working towards it.
And not only like who it gets back to, I think there's a certain type of person, like when I see someone in certain situations talking shit about another, like one of their competitors' business, that just puts a bad taste in me.
Yeah, why do I want to
Like if your only selling factor is shitting on them, and you're not telling me like what you're gonna do, like I'm turned off by that.
I will tell you that there is a number of part of a bunch of Facebook groups, from contractors and subcontractors to real estate agents to just investors. And and again, I'm going to point out some of these subcontractors, they're constantly going on there bitching about their clients. And I'm just like, I'm never going to do business with you because I don't want to be the subject of your complaint, right? And I get that, hey, maybe you want to air out your grievances and just vent, but you can't do it on a public forum, right? And it's just a terrible look. And I know that I will never reach out to that person. There's a few of them. I keep my distance. It's just a bad look.
How much customer service is so important. We talk about it all the time. And I think there is, we've all had horrible clients, right? But there's a certain point you got to ask yourself, like, okay, did I not do my job?
Sure.
Did I not convey and make it very clear what the expectations would be from me that's causing them to act this way? Like maybe there's something I could have done different. And the people who bitch all the time, they don't think like that. And that's something that, like, I'm more attracted to the person and to do business with someone that looks themselves in the mirror, even if they did a great job, to be like, all right, what didn't I do well? What did I do better?
I think accountability. Yeah, accountability. But I think that's some of the immaturity of them being young business owners, right? They haven't learned that lesson yet, right?
I think some people, though, that's just, they're not wired to take ownership of what happened. Like if you had an employee at Oogie Games that screwed something up, instead of, blame it all on them, you're the type of person to be like, well, what did I do wrong?
Sure.
That they thought it was okay to do that, to take that ownership.
And that's, it brings up a good point. Like, in the automotive world, like something's bound to go wrong, no matter how good of a job you do, how great a parts you use or whatever, like something can go wrong and will, and it's just how,
like an engine blowing on a brand new vehicle,
uncontrollable situations. And, it takes, it also takes a
by the way, that was not his company. Anything to do with it. Yeah. That was straight from the dealership.
I mean, if GM was my company, I would have been in a lot better spot. But yeah, I mean, you're going to have situations where, things will go wrong, no matter if you did the install correctly and had everything 100%.
It's about how you handle it.
Exactly. Right? And that's one of our things is, like, we stand behind our work 100%. We will press our distributors. We will press our parts suppliers like no other to back their product, because we back our work. Mm-hmm. So, we only deal with companies that back their product 100%. Mm-hmm. And so that we feel confident in backing the labor, because 9 times out of 10, we've come down to situations where companies have repaid us for our time.
Sure.
To make up for the failed product. And that's just because of our level of professionalism and how we handle things.
Well, I think there's also something to be said, and I try to live by this. Just admit you made a mistake.
Yeah.
Admit that it's your fault, and then explain how you're going to remedy the problem. And if you did that from the word go, how can I be mad at you as a customer, right?
Exactly.
It's as simple as that. Too many people try to blame other people, cover it up, go around it, or not say anything, and then it's like,
why?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not worth it. But on the flip side, like you were saying, like there's going to be difficult clients too. Like you're just going to have people that just are just out there.
Pleasing.
There's no pleasing, and it's just, it is what it is. You ever that? Sure, you've dealt plenty.
No comment.
No comment. But it's like, at the same time, it's like you got to be able to face that as well. And in a retail/service setting,
you want to work for free too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys could just redo everything for nothing, that'd be great. But yeah, it's it takes a special person as well to be able to handle the brunt of that too. I got a sweet team, man. Like, I'm very fortunate that I can do what I do and have the flexibility and have a team of guys that is just rock solid. Like, we've had growing pains for sure. Like,
I mean, any business.
Yeah, through the process, we've had, employee growing pains and stuff like that. But
especially at this, you're still fairly early on.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, to me, I'm still like baby business, right? Like, I will always have that mindset of like, okay, I'm still working. Like, I'm never there, right? Until, we can move on to the next level, right? That's when we're like, okay, and then you're starting over. And it's like, every step that you take is a new opening. Like, it's like you're stepping into the unknown. So, I'm excited to see where it goes.
So what have you added to the business? So you got onto Niagara Street, you built that out. I know it's a big building, a huge commitment, a ton of money was dumped into that.
Yep.
I've seen some things that you've added with the dyno machine and stuff like that.
So we actually took on another property 2 blocks down.
Okay.
And it just became available. Our current landlords, it's one of their buildings, and they had no need for it. It's another couple thousand square feet space. And
what sort of commitment did you have to make, length of lease? Because, again, being in retail, local business owners, sometimes you can get away with 1 or 2 years. Listen, some of the big guys, they want 10 to 15 to 20 year commitments out of you. And it's like, well, I'm not buying the building. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's scary because you got to personally guarantee a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
And if you close your business, you're still on the hook for the rest of the lease. And I had to deal with that.
Yeah, that's rough. Yeah, I didn't even really then those are like the little ins and outs that you don't really think about, right? But I got really lucky. The landlords are pretty cool. They take care of us. We take care of them for sure by the way we've treated their buildings. But I've locked down just 1 year leases on those buildings year to year. So it's really been
I don't mean to interrupt, but I remember looking for a retail space on Hurdle Ave, right? And this corner spot, I thought it was the greatest location. But it had been vacant for a long time. I've driven past it for a year or so. And through the grapevine, right, asking my commercial real estate agent at the time to look into it, he's like, listen, you don't want that location. I'm like, why? What's wrong? He said, honestly, it's the building owner. I'm like, well, what happens is he'll lock you into a 1 year lease. And once he'll sit outside and literally count your customers. And once he knows that your business is flourishing, your lease is up, our rent's going to double. And then what do you do?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Right?
You're up shit.
So there is that delicate balance, right? Yeah. Like if you had shitty landlords and they see you're being very successful, after that year lease, they could say, well, you proved your concept, you're making a shit ton of money. Now it's our turn to cash.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. And honestly, it's scary to think about. And that's, long-term, vision for this is to be able to build a property or buy a property that's 10,000 square feet and have literally a one-stop shop for everything to get in there. But yeah, that's long-term. But yeah, that building is in progress. We have redid some concrete in there with the landlord, and we dug a pit and have a all-wheel drive in-ground dyno. And we use it for performance tuning, power runs where people want to see what they make, but we also use it for diagnostic. We do a lot of driveline testing that you wouldn't naturally do on the road or be able to figure out on the road. You have a slipping transmission or whatever, and you're driving on the road, you're not really being able to pinpoint when it's happening. We can put it on there and simulate the load that you have on the street and be able to test different parts and components in a controlled environment and very safe area. So it's been an asset for sure.
So are you dealing with people who are building a car? So is there any people that bring in a car that they already have that you modify or anything, or is it just people are building from the ground up?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily do a lot of build from the ground up. A lot of our clientele is the guy that has a Corvette or has something that he wants to throw, a couple performance parts on, maybe some aesthetic stuff, and go from there. But then we have customers that have full engine builds with big turbos and stuff like that they want to do, superchargers, all sorts of stuff. My best saying I say is anything from mild to wild, right? It can be, a simple intake that we bolt on, or it could be drop everything from the chassis and you're ordering all new, engine parts and all that stuff for it. And it can get pretty hectic, but yeah, it's definitely like any other business. It's like trying to find your specific niche, right? And I started off with the Mazdas, and that's, a very direct platform that I deal with, but we've tried to branch into other ones and try to secure those spots for the vacancies that are in the area, to try to pinpoint those. But
one of the things I love to see is when somebody takes their hobby or a passion and can translate that into a business where you make money, right?
Yeah.
The longevity of you being in this industry and growing that business, right? I know you still work a 9-to-5 job, but when you're burning the midnight oil on the nights and weekends and doing the promotions, being at the car shows, being at the auto show, and doing some of these events, I see that enthusiasm through social media. And when I see you at the car events, right, like that passion for it comes out.
Yeah.
Because you could very easily get burned out from a lot of this stuff.
I still can't believe how it started. Like, you didn't start this with the intention of building a business.
No, not at all.
And by putting out the information that you couldn't find.
Yeah. And my wife always, jabs at me for it too. Sometimes it's like, she's like, this was never even supposed to be a thing. And I was like, well, we're here. Yeah,
honey, I got an expensive hobby and I need to pay for it.
Yeah, lock in. So
that's just so crazy.
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. And I also like to see, how other people do it too, because I absorb everything, right? And that's my biggest thing is like this past year and a half, and because I've talked to you, offline, but it's like I'm trying to network with everybody that I possibly can, even people in the same business, because, I'm not after, like, I believe that in any area there's enough customers and there's enough money to go around for everybody. Sure. And if those people can band together and I can feel comfortable calling X and X shop and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. Have you ever seen this? I know you deal with some of this stuff. What are your thoughts? And not have to worry about, oh, this guy's going to, take a cut.
Well, that's one of the things that I've been impressed with in the car scene in Buffalo, right? Is knowing the shops and the detail shops and the PPF, the performance they all know each other.
Yeah.
And they work together. And then I'm not saying it's a 100%, but I mean, I've had my cars go to like 2 or 3 different places to have multiple things done.
Yeah.
Based on like, hey, they work together because they do this really well and they do that really well, and I need them both done.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the best part of it is like, if they can work together, that because at the end of the day, it's the product that the customer gets.
Right.
And if that can be 100%, then that's all that matters.
But also the loyalty from customer service, knowing, hey, I'm going to drop it off at point A.
Yes.
They're going to take it to B and C and get it back, and I don't have to go at each place, drop off and pick up, and this is like a 3-week process, and you can get it done in 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of, like, most, and I feel like this is in many industries, is like, I think consumers just thrive off of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to know what's going on, like,
right. Yep.
because we live in a world, right, where like you really don't know much, like, anymore. Like, there's a lot of information, like, too much information, but you also don't know what's going on.
But also, you take one of my most expensive possessions.
Exactly.
To some people, their car is their car. They don't give a shit what they drive. It takes them to the grocery store. It takes them to work,
right,
and home, right. Where other people, this is a hobby to me, and I invest money into my car, and I like to drive nice cars. That's just one thing that I spend my money on.
Yeah.
Right. But that possession is in somebody else's possession.
Yeah.
And it
could be scary.
Yeah.
Well, and the transparency, like you're saying, I just think it's so funny. In real estate, we were talking about, clients that suck. You might get an agent that's complaining, saying like, oh my God, I worked with this person forever. Then they walked into an open house and bought a house with another agent. And I did this for them. I did that for them. I did this. And in some cases, like, did they even know you did all those things? Like, if you weren't transparent about what was going on,
sure,
and all the effort you were putting in, that may have changed the whole dynamic.
I struggle with that sometimes because,
You're just handling your shit.
I'm just behind the scenes doing what I need to do. And unfortunately, I haven't explained the process enough to my customer or my client. And I'm just handling it behind the scenes. And then it's like, oh, I didn't update them, or they had a question that they didn't ask. And it's, well, I'm like, hey, it's already handled, right?
Right.
Or they didn't feel like I was hands-on.
You're doing the most amazing job because you didn't bother them with anything, but they might be like, what the hell's Kevin doing?
Yeah. I haven't heard from him in 3 weeks. Well, you don't need to hear from me within 3 weeks because it's in the hands of the mortgage company and the attorney. It's behind the scenes. So I try to explain that, but sometimes, again, you get busy and you drop the ball and you're not as clear as you should be.
Yeah, and you nailed it, man. It's like you're thinking about the customer end result, right? And that's where you're like, what you were just saying, like you're so in the motion of just doing,
right,
that sometimes you forget the step of like, okay, hey, this is what I'm doing and this is why, right? And sometimes people just need that second to like, hey, this is why we're doing this, and this is like what it's gonna do for you.
I will also say one of the things, I don't know if it's a fault, but as a business owner and I feel like I'm a very responsible person. You tell me you know how to do something. You tell me you're going to do something. I believe you.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, I swear to God, I had a sidewalk put in one time on a house that I was renovating, and the guy, he was fixing my basement and working with concrete and mason, and he said, "Hey, I can pour that sidewalk for you." Fucking great,
sweet.
Yeah,
one
gives
shot.
me a price, pours it, and I called him. I said, "You should never pour sidewalk again because it was crooked. It was unlevel. It was, I mean." And some of my other subcontractors were like making fun of me and the job, but I was like, he told me he could do it. I believe. Right. Like, just, I would never tell you that I could do something unless I can do it.
Yeah.
You going back to what you were saying about, you're just doing what you're supposed to do. You're thinking of the customer end result, but you're just doing it. There's a good friend of mine on our team. His name's James Fleming. Shout out to James Fleming. He's a Navy veteran. And I wonder if it's the military aspect. Anytime we go out of town, James, he's like my right hand man. He always covers for me. And like, I might write him an email with like all this stuff, and I may not hear from him, and I'll be like, what the fuck? I haven't heard from James. And the next thing I know, it's all done.
Yeah.
Like, he just
behind us. Like, it doesn't need a reply. I'm just going to do it. And yeah, I just, and I don't want to leave out either that, part of the success too is like, with and I don't even want to say success because I don't really think of myself as like a success yet. Like,
Well, your doors are still open.
Exactly.
You're doing something, right?
Yeah, no, that is true. But it's my like train of thought, like, okay, we're not there yet, right? We just got to keep
I think that's a good mindset to have. I often, in some younger people's eyes, they look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're successful," and in my eyes, I'm like, I don't think I'm there yet, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know what that level of success is going to be where you're like content.
Yeah.
And if I think it as an entrepreneur, I don't know if you ever get there.
I feel like when people think that, I failed my way to where I am. Like, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like I'm still, it's still a struggle every day.
Exactly. But last year, I with everything getting as crazy as it was and how busy it was, and I was doing a disservice to my guys by, not being able to keep up on it. I brought the guy that we know on as a partner, and it's been a blessing, honestly. Shout out Ryan. But yeah, he's definitely helped in a lot of ways on the day-to-day operations side. Just being there, make sure everything is, squared up and going on the path of like what I'm putting out. But yeah, it's been great. I think we're on an awesome path. We're trying to be a part of like everything in this area because, we're all car enthusiasts first, right? And that's what we're trying to embrace or engulf ourselves in this community is like the car community.
Sure.
So, getting in with Buffalo Cars and Coffee was huge for us.
Yep.
Like that was really cool.
What an event that was this year. Like, it's incredible when you can't think it's going to grow anymore.
And it just does.
Insane.
It's not, I couldn't believe the turnout.
Yeah.
It was like 1,500 plus cars or something like that. It was absolutely wild. But yeah, just building those relationships with different companies, like I was saying, and just networking is huge. And I think it's going to pave the way for what the future holds for Spooling Up. So,
Well, it seems like you continue to grow, obviously with growing pains. So I don't know if your 9 to 5 job wants to hear this, but I mean, what's your plans moving into the future?
so I keep that open ended. You know, I love what I do. You know, marketing is, I feel like I have a knack for it.
Sure.
And you know, I can balance them right now. I can do everything I need to do there. It's hard. Don't get me wrong. Like
We
sometimes
ask your wife if you can balance.
yeah, Cassie, you can answer that one. Yeah, I don't know if she'll tell you the straight answer or not, but yeah, it's difficult sometimes. And you know, sometimes I can't get away from my home office at night because I'm like, okay, I got to catch up on this so that I can do that tomorrow and make sure that this is done. You know, being a corporate asset, you know, I'm handling 7 dealerships of stuff, and it's like I'm not just like doing stuff for one guy. I'm doing stuff for 150 plus people, and it becomes overwhelming sometimes. And I got to travel too between locations and back and forth. So that's it's definitely a hurdle, but it's not impossible, right? So
No, but I think you're a prime example of somebody that starts a business out of a side hustle.
Yep.
Right. And they're able to do it and grow it because they haven't left their job yet. Right.
Yeah.
Like their, family and, wife, kid, car payments, mortgage payment, you have bills. Right.
absolutely.
And when you start a business, I mean, I don't know how many you're constantly reinvesting, and it's some years are just
Well,
not
it's a
making-
testament. It's great to see too that like, because some people just they're told like, well, you have to just jump in, you have to quit that regular job. Like,
Yeah,
you don't always have to.
No.
And really, sometimes it's not a good idea to do that.
Yeah.
We see that in real estate all the time. Someone will get their real estate license and like quit their job.
That's the number one thing I tell new agents. I'm like, make sure you have something. You do not leave your job. Like, it's going to take you 6 months to a year to even do a deal or two sometimes, and then to be self-sufficient on 100% because you're just really your own business.
Yeah, you're building a portfolio.
Yeah.
You're building relationships.
It takes time.
Yeah.
And even if you're the best salesperson ever and you make a sale in your first day, you're not seeing a paycheck for about 3 months later. Like the idea of just jumping in is such bad advice in most cases that it's just awesome to see like what you've done, and you're still, working a 9 to 5. That's amazing to see.
And like you said, though, it's like it wasn't a preconceived thing. Like, I'm going to go into business. It just kind of like happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like a game of, okay, let's figure this out.
Well, it sounds like you've got a team that are in place.
Yeah.
And when those struggles come up, you're plugging those holes and finding people that fit, right? And that's
putting out
huge.
fires.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's, again, part of your leadership, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's been an awesome journey. To go back to your question, I don't know what the future holds as far as day job. I would love to 100% work for myself at some point, thinking about possibly marketing endeavors outside, but don't know yet.
What are some of your favorite cars to work on?
So I'm a big Mazda guy. I came from a Mazda platform. Those are fun just because I know a lot about them and they're easy. They come natural to me now. But I'm really enjoying the newer C8s. I don't directly work on them per se anymore, but anytime they're in the shop and I'm with the guys or whatever and working on them, they're fascinating. Just like the engineering behind them is pretty cool. And just to see something new and refreshed to the market that is different than historically that you're used to seeing in that platform. So that's pretty cool. And I would say other than that, I've actually kind of been liking the off-road pickup stuff too. It's been pretty cool. Shout out Chris, my shop manager. He brought in a lot of clientele with the Jeep stuff that he's into, and we get a lot of Jeeps, ton of them, and
super easy to mod. Tons of
there's so much available.
Sort of thing, somebody who's going to go off-roading on a Jeep that they would come to you.
Oh, they would right off the bat. It'd be some kind of suspension kit, probably bigger tires, and a lot of people do the bolt-on fenders and all the accessories for the rear wheel delete and stuff like that. We have all that stuff readily available. That's not in stock in store, but we can have within a day or two. But we match or beat online prices for parts. So people just come to us for parts sometimes if they're a DIY person, right? So we understand that because, like I said, we're enthusiasts.
For how you started, yeah.
Exactly. So we never shed, or throw shade on that portion of it. Like if you want to buy parts from us, sweet. And we'll either match or beat online wherever you're seeing too. So,
That's great.
that opens up a whole nother category. But
One of the most fun I've ever had in a vehicle was in my F-350. 8-inch lift, 39-inch mud tires.
yeah,
And, suspension, everything. And we took it the first month I had it. It was like December in Ellicottville. My buddy owned a ton of property out there, so we just went, and I was scared. Like I'm like, I don't want to get this thing stuck. So I was super like easy on it, and I mean, we had this thing in so much mud and water that the cabin was steaming up, and I had to open the windows and let it like defog from all the water like going through creek. And I tried. Then by the end of the day, I was trying to get it stuck. And I couldn't get it stuck.
yeah.
And when I tell you this thing was caked, I had hay and grass hanging off of it for like a year.
And then you're
underneath. I know. Dude, it was like caked. I mean, just you couldn't even see that it was a white truck anymore.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun.
Yeah, man. It's like it almost feels like when you're in a truck, like you get that mentality of like, yeah, man, like I can't break this.
Yeah,
but
until you're
you do.
Until you're in rush hour traffic and you get the road rage, and I'm like,
yeah,
I'm just gonna drive right over you,
drive right over that fender, buddy. Yeah, yeah. No, it's fun, but no, I just think they're cool. There's just I think the accessory and like aftermarket support for like off road stuff is really cool. There's a lot you can do with them. So,
is there any like cars that right stock, right from the dealership that impressed you that you're seeing with like newer engineering of some of the new sports cars?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the C8 is an incredible machine.
I think dollar for dollar.
Dollar for dollar, you're not gonna match anything to that. I mean, what you're getting for a car. I mean, even if you got a base model C8, I mean, you're talking entry level, $70,000 out the door.
Sure.
I mean, your performance to dollar, you're not touching it for a brand new car. Maybe some Audis and stuff out there that are pretty good, but yeah, that's a really good buy right now. I think that's why you're seeing so many of them on the road.
Well, and yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately they're mass produced for anybody that might have something exotic and rare. But again, performance wise, and I mean, you see them all over the place. But yeah, I mean, they're super impressive. The market's a little flooded right now, and you're starting to see numbers drop on them because you couldn't get even the Z06s, right? Like they're going for $30,000-$40,000. Even more over asking.
Yeah.
Which is
when they first came out,
God,
you'd have a stickered car for.
And it's been like that for years.
Yeah,
I thought it was just in the real estate market.
No,
I had no idea that
the car market has been crazy from even before COVID with the Corvettes.
Yeah, because you had a Z06.
Yeah, I had a C7 Z06 Z07 package, and the guy that I bought it from, I bought it with 800 miles, had 15 cars, and he paid $30,000 over sticker. And the bath that he took on it.
Yeah, you gotta love picking up on the extra on that.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, yeah, you can take the depreciation on that, buddy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's brutal. It depends on the market too. Like a couple years ago, like through COVID, you could have really made out if you bought a car pre-COVID and then decided to sell it during COVID. I mean, you were making out.
I had a client that ordered an Escalade, and it took a year to get to him. So he ended up getting a BMW in the meantime.
Yeah.
And then a year later, the Escalade shows up, and he's like, well, I don't need it. But the dealership was like,
we want
just BMW. Buy it, and you can just sell it and make money.
Yep. Yeah, it's wild. Do you guys see that, like, with, like, the housing market? Like, how has that been? I know,
Well, there's just no inventory, right?
Right.
So
what's the struggle right now? Is besides inventory, like, is it hard to deal? Is it harder to deal with clients now with the like roadblocks?
I think it's been the same over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but I think so. In one issue you have is like for first time home buyers, like the idea of getting like a starter home for like $150,000 is almost impossible now.
That ship sailed.
We just sold. Someone bought a double in BlackRock for $185, another double in BlackRock for like $130. So like there's some, little pockets where it's possible, but like if you go into the suburbs, like forget it. I just
A starter home 5 years ago in Tonawanda was
Yeah.
$125. It's now $275.
yeah
50 to
yeah.
275.
So I was just on an appointment for a 923 square foot ranch. Okay, small, but being a ranch, the basement's big. So what? Okay, it's still very small. The exact style house went up for sale across the street for $250 for a 900 square foot ranch, and they got $280 for it.
Wow.
Now that and there you go. Like that's just exactly the numbers he hit on. Like that's supposed to be a starter home for someone that their payment is like, $2,400 a month or something for the first house.
Yeah.
With when you include the taxes and everything. Like so that's one struggle. Then on the flip side, people who are like in that second tier, like okay, maybe they're selling their first home, they're moving up, and you would think like the $300,000 to $500,000 range, you have a lot to choose from.
Yeah.
But now the houses that are $300,000, $350,000 are almost unlivable in some neighborhoods.
Yeah, you're dropping 50 to 75 into them.
Just the gate, just
just an update.
And then,
Yeah.
but this is the biggest struggle I see then is, okay, let's just up our price. We'll go to the house that has everything done for $450,000 instead. Well, because that one was so nice, and like he said, there's no inventory.
People are
Everyone wants the house. So even if you are like, okay, I know the comps say it's worth $425, I'll pay $470. Well, guess what? When everyone else is fighting for it, the terms of the other people's offers, like you might be $470 with a mortgage and doing a home inspection. Well, if someone else is $460 cash, or they're paying 50% down and guaranteeing the appraisal and a non-refundable deposit, like you might find your dream home, and you might be willing to pay more than anyone else, and you may have no shot at it.
Yeah.
That is the struggles that we see with the inventory issue right now.
Yeah. It's we just purchased a new house not too long ago, and it's like, that we weren't like actively looking, but at the same time we were, but we lost out on a bunch, and we were being kind of aggressive. And
Right, there was like, you look at it and you're like, what could I have done different?
nothing.
No.
Like
You can't just go to the home store and pick off the shelf. Yeah, that's the house I want for $400,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take it and pay for it. It's just when you're just actively bidding, you just sometimes. I mean, I pulled comps for one house that my clients went $50,000 over in Lancaster, and the comp showed, and I showed the asking price, and then I showed where it landed, right? And they went from 30,000 over to 110,000 over, and I'm just like, there's no rhyme or reason on any one of them why they went to those numbers. You can't control what somebody else is going through.
Right, because you might have someone they've lost on so many that they're just like, fuck it.
Yeah.
They're going to come in so aggressive, like you like that, and that's circumstantial. Then on the flip side, so say we're going to list your house, and you're like, well, that house went for X amount.
Yeah.
My house is nicer, so I would
For easy
It's like, well, sometimes when you dig deeper, it's like, well, they had 5 offers, and there was that one crazy person, but everyone else's offer is down here. So how can we guarantee you're going to get?
there is none.
Right.
I think the good thing though is like for a seller right now is like, with limited inventory, if you have something good to offer up, it's going to go quick. But
Well, it's going to go quick. You're going to get over asking, right? And all that extra money that you're going to make, you're going to put back into. So it does balance out in some aspects, but it's not an easy conversation to have sometimes. Because they got to overspend first before they go sell their house a lot of times.
Yep.
And then on the flip side too, like, okay, it's going to go over asking if it's priced right? Because in this, this is what we talk about all the time, is the psychology of the buyer. The buyers are assuming it's going to go over asking, right? So in the event, depending on the house, I don't think it shouldn't always be a one-size-fits-all strategy. Some cases, we do encourage people to overprice if like maybe they don't have the type of house that appeals to everyone, right? So if you have, if you're on like a main road, like Transit Road, okay, it doesn't matter what you price it at in the sense that if 10 people go through, 9 of them might say, I don't like the location, right?
Right.
So even if you don't like that, and I'm like, well, what if we can get it for you for 10 grand less? It's still on Transit Road.
Yeah.
I don't like that. So there's certain situations where maybe overpricing makes more sense, because you can't always bank on the fact that you're going to drive up the price. But then you have, let's just say a typical house in a neighborhood that is desirable. Okay, if you price it right, people are assuming it's going to go over. So now you have to price it lower.
Yeah.
If you price it too low, people are not going to want to pay X amount over. So you might not end up where you should anyways.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's this very odd game of,
And I feel like that's a struggle for you guys too. Like you have to now figure out how to manipulate that based on the area that the house is in too. Like I feel like it's a harder challenge now than it's ever been to figure out like where that sits because of comps. Like comps
everybody
are all over
wants
yes,
customers, clients want you to have the crystal ball, right? And
right.
there's so many factors
now.
and variables.
That's where going back to transparency and communication, right? Like that's where it's our job in our business to have that conversation with people to explain. I think it's our fiduciary responsibility to explain all the possible outcomes there might be. Like if we price here, this might happen. If we price here, this might happen.
Yeah.
Like there's all these different avenues to take, and it's about us explaining all those possible scenarios and letting them, ultimately decide like where they feel comfortable being. Because like I had a conversation with someone recently. It was a double in Cheektowaga that the number we wanted was 350 because there was one comp that hit that. Everything else was under.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted the 350. So it was, okay, nothing in the neighborhood had ever been listed above 299. So do we want to be the one person that's listed higher and might be perceived that house is too high and is going to go too high? But on the flip side, I said, let me ask you this, you really want 350? Do you want like 30 people in this house that can't even come close to affording 350? And he was like, no, I don't want that. So, there's always, to me, at the end of the day, you just got to communicate all the possible scenarios.
Yeah. I always tell like my guys, like you can never over communicate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would always rather someone have a very, very outlined expectation of good and bad.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yes.
hey, your car came in for all of this and, it could be something as silly as a broken wire, or you could be looking at like serious engine maintenance.
That just happened on my pool. It was a wire.
I'm so
That
sad.
was corroded.
I feel like pools are so
Dude,
hundreds of
insane.
times anyway.
But literally, we changed every single part of the saltwater system before we found this wire. And then I'm like, just leave it. It was going to, shit was going to break anyways.
Yeah.
Just fucking leave it. And everything's new and I'm good. I don't want to have another problem for another 7 years, right? Like, just leave all the new equipment on there.
Yeah, that's a tough break.
Yeah.
But that happens. It's just the nature of it.
Well, listen, thanks for being on. Why don't you
Yeah,
plug your business? Tell us how to get a hold of you, where you're at, emails, addresses. Everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Spooling Up Performance, we're located at 1455 Niagara Street in Buffalo. Phone number is 716-205-3397. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And any inquiries, you can just email spoolingupperformance@gmail.com. It's like a little plug there. But yeah, if you need anything, hit us up. We'll be glad to take care of you.
Awesome. Appreciate you being on.
Yeah.
And if you like what you're hearing, keep following, sharing all of our information. I'll love to keep bringing entrepreneurs from the Western New York and Buffalo area. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.